Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
I've been going out with a girl, her name is Julie, but last night she said to me when we were watching telly.
Still, I'm not getting it in the sense that I understand how a sense of grievance and inadequacy could make you, for example, blame Muslims for your position in life, but the fruit juice stuff and the hoaxes of the high schools, surely that's the point at which you go, whoa, okay, this guy made me feel a little bit better about being such a loser for a while, but I've got to get off this bus now because he's maligning grieving parents. Gary's in Virginia, in America. Gary, what can you tell us?
Hi.
Hello, Gary.
I think that some of your callers are right, that some of Alex's audience are benighted souls, as some of you might say. But I think that it doesn't explain it all, as you've said. And I think the explanation is that he fills a need that mainstream media does not. And
mainstream media doesn't tell demonstrable lies.
Well, actually, I think a lot of people in this country and your country are beginning to believe the opposite.
Well, of course they are, because people like Donald Trump say that the man who says Satanists are taking over America and fruit juice cartons will turn you gay is trustworthy. Yeah. Of course people are going to start believing it. But it doesn't make it true, Gary.
Some people believe Donald Trump. Some people believe this or that. There are some people, though, who actually think for themselves. I count myself among them. And I am unwilling to take one media outlet's word for everything.
Right. So let's run through. Can we run through some of Alex Jones's stuff? And you can tell me, as someone who thinks for himself, which ones you agree with and you think he is offering a viable alternative to traditional media.
I guarantee you every example you come up with will be nutty.
Right.
And as I said to the researcher, I think about 30% of what Alex is about is completely nutty.
30%?
30% of it. I think about 30% of it is completely wrong. And then there's 30% of it that if you look at it, it has a germ of truth.
Right.
It's not.
And do you buy any of his products?
No.
No. Why not?
I have no interest, no need.
Why does he sell them?
I actually don't listen to Alex except occasionally.
So which bits of the output you've heard do you think were true?
I think he promotes people who come on his show who are not Alex himself, but are guests. I can't think of a name except for maybe Steve Bannon or who's that fellow?
I could have predicted his name would pop up in the context of this. But I mean, I know roughly what Steve Bannon stands for. He's the fellow that says people should wear racism or accusations of racism as a badge of honor. So we know where he's coming from. What is it? Because you used the number yourself, 30%. What does this man say that's true? Because I just said I'll read you the examples of things and you tell me what's true. And you said every example you come up with will be nonsense. So tell me the stuff that's not nonsense that he says, because that would help me understand how perhaps some people can turn a blind eye to the fruit juice cartons, to the Satanists taking over America, to Bill Gates being a eugenicist trying to wipe out minorities, to the government controlling the weather, to Hillary Clinton running a child sex ring out of a DC area pizza restaurant, to the government being complicit in countless terrorist and gunman attacks, to the Sandy Hook massacre being a hoax, and to Glenn Beck being a CIA operative. What would you put on the other side of the scales, the stuff that you think is true?
I haven't got the time to even try to think.
Well, I'll just take one thing, because, I mean, 30% is nonsense. That means 70% is at least plausible.
Yeah.
So one example?
30% of it is completely wrong.
Yeah.
30% of it is completely nutty. And the remaining 30% only has a germ of truth.
Yeah, so tell me some of the stuff that has a germ of truth, then.
I've never found Alex to be the source of the whole truth, the complete truth, and nothing.
So some of the stuff he says that has a germ of truth in it includes
having some guest on what Roger Stone, for example.
Yeah, another person who's of interest to the FBI. But I'm not. I know he gets on guests who do the kind of racist hate preaching and are also very close to Donald Trump. I can read his own guest list. It's the stuff he says that you think contains a germ of truth I'm interested in.
Yeah. Well, sorry, can't give you any examples because I don't listen to Alex that much.
Why did you ring me then?
I'm telling you something that you're not quite perceiving, which is
That'll be it. It's me that's not perceiving it. Bloke rings radio station and says 30% of what the guy says has a germ of truth. I say, could you name one thing that's got a germ of truth in it? And you can't.
The disaffection with mainstream media is what is driving this.
Oh no, I understand that, but now you're explaining to me. Now you're explaining to me why people choose comforting lies over uncomfortable truths. And I don't want to embarrass you, Gary, but are we going to get anything that he has said that you can now tell me contains a germ of truth?
People like you are
Here it
Dr.
comes.
Frankenstein.
Yeah,
that is creating Tommy Robinson.
that's it, exactly that. So, final chance, something he said that contains a germ of truth. Anything at all. What have you got?
Well, like I say, I honestly don't keep track of what Alex says specifically.
Okay. Well, thanks for ringing in to tell me all about a chap that you don't listen to or keep track of. How bizarre.
Tony's in Milton Keynes. Hello, Tony.
Hello, Iain. I'm utterly flabbergasted that you, being a publisher, are actually saying that you support freedom of expression on one hand, and then you have the cheek to infer that Boris is using his comments as either populism or, dare I say, classic racism. It's outrageous. The people who are responsible for inciting the flames of racial harmony are the ones who are now speaking out, calling for a lynching of Boris. They've all got their own agendas.
Sorry, who's calling for a lynching of Boris?
Come on. The howls of sham rage from all of these people who probably haven't even read the article. And as you said, words have consequences. It wasn't that long ago before someone called Salman Rushdie had a fatwa. It wasn't that long ago when thousands of people were killed in Muslim countries through stampedes because they heard a rumour. People who stand up and condemn Boris's colourful language, and that's what it was.
All right.
He's a communist.
Okay, all right. Let me defend myself, seeing as you're attacking me on this.
Try.
If this was a one-off incident, I could probably go along with you, Tony, but it's not. He's got a track record for this sort of thing. There are plenty of incidents, and I named some of them at the beginning of the 5 hour, where the Piccaninny watermelon smiles, the Barack Obama ancestry. There are plenty of others. This is a pattern that has developed, and it's an unfortunate pattern. And I can't sit here and say that I'm going to let that go, because I think he deserves to be called out on this. And the fact that he's gone into hiding, the fact that he hasn't come out and defended himself, to me tells me all I need to know.
So are you calling Boris a racist?
I'm not going to quite go that far, but I think he knew exactly. I think he knew exactly what he was doing. I think he knew exactly the audience that he was talking to. Pardon?
You know what was in his mind.
I can have an educated guess.
Describing his motive.
I can have an educated guess. I hope I'm wrong.
A guess. That's really scientific, Iain. Really scientific.
I have followed his career for many, many years.
It's downside better than yours.
Well, he's been Foreign Secretary. I completely agree.
An MP, and I would like him, as a card-carrying Conservative, to be leader of our party. As for Theresa May condemning him, the architect of the hostile environment, the person responsible for the Windrush...
Calm down, Tony. You'll do yourself a bit of disservice in a minute.
Why?
Well, because you seem to be getting overexcited.
Oh dear. Okay, put your patronising comments aside. How can you definitely say on London radio that...
No, it's actually national radio, but I'll let that one go.
Well, whatever. That Boris's motives were, as you said...
Well, because I'm here to give my opinions, and that is my educated guess. As a political pundit and commentator, that's what I believe.
Yeah, but you are going to... Look, words have consequences.
Well, but that's what Boris should realise, isn't it? That is what Boris Johnson should realise.
What if some mad Islamist attacks Boris Johnson, like our poor MP up north by the other extreme? You are pandering to the worst possible elements in our society.
I'm pandering to that. I think he's pandering to that.
No, not. How do you know? Have you actually asked him?
Well, if he wants to come on the programme, I'll happily ask him, but he hasn't talked to anyone over the last 3 days.
But what you're saying is basically no Edinburgh Fringe, no stand-up comics. Let's really censor...
Do you know his mind?
That's what you're saying.
Do you know his mind? You say I don't know his mind, so how can you be sure that you're right?
He is a closet racist, that he's going to...
I haven't said that. I haven't said he's a closet racist. Your words, not mine.
When Anne, that lady, came on, you were almost disappointed when she didn't actually mount the barricade.
Oh, so you know my mind as well, do you?
The disappointment in your voice.
You know my mind.
You don't like Boris anymore.
I'm quite open. I've always said this. I don't think Boris Johnson should be leader of the Conservative Party or Prime Minister.
Allow Boris to speak for himself instead of putting words into his mouth.
Well, you seem to know what I think, so why do you think I can't? Why can't I? Honestly, Tony.
And some flip-flopping when you say on one hand I believe in freedom of expression, but on the other hand, Boris might say something that will cause Muslim women to be attacked in the streets, for heaven's sake. What about Muslim misogyny? We're never going to hear from these women because they're not allowed to speak out, are they?
Well, it's funny how they phone in my programme, isn't it?
Oh, yes. Well, they aren't going to be the ones that are walking around in their burqas with men behind them saying, don't you dare look at a European man.
And how many of these have you met?
I haven't met any of them.
Exactly. So how do you know that they're treated like that?
Oh, so you're saying that a woman in Muslim society has equality?
No, you haven't met any Muslim women wearing a burqa.
Women have equality.
Do Muslim women have equality? Well, we heard from Fayez Mughal earlier from Faith Matters, who probably knows about this more than you or I do.
Absolutely.
And he said that under 0.05% of Muslim women are forced to wear the burqa. And I would be the first to criticise any Muslim man who tries to make his wife wear something that she doesn't want to, as I'm sure you would.
Absolutely.
Shall we part on agreement?
I think we agreed to differ, Iain.
Not on that one.
Bye.
Bye.
Howard's in Watford. Howard, what would you like to say?
Oh, good morning, James.
Hello, mate.
I think, first of all, xenophobia has always been part of this country, and I put it down as the United Kingdom. You can go back as far as the Saxons and the Normans and the Romans. There was always xenophobia. But I think the current situation goes back a little bit further than Osama bin Laden, and it goes back, I think, to the late 70s, early 80s, when you had an influx of immigrants coming into this country, quite rightly, looking for a better life. And the Muslim Council of Great Britain came out with a statement where they said they will not be happy until this country is ruled by Sharia law.
What year was that?
And you know, James, I think it was end of 70s, early 80s. It is something I can remember watching on the news. I can remember reading it in the papers. And they said they will not be happy until their flag is flying over Downing Street.
The Muslim Council of Britain was only founded in 1997.
Well, then it must have been, okay, I apologise for that. It must have been whoever was speaking.
Well, we need to know who it was. I mean, if it was big enough to make the national news, we should be able to work out who it was. We know who it wasn't. Who do you think it might have been?
It may have been a before the Muslim Council. I'm using that as a name, but it may have been. But it was certainly people talking for...
The preparatory committee met on the 15th of June 1996, so we've got that. What came before that?
I mean, it is documented.
Well, that's what I'm trying to find. Where should I look?
I have a look on Google because
I am. What shall I Google?
Muslim statement on Sharia law in the UK.
Yeah.
Let's see what it comes up with.
Yeah.
But I can certainly remember this statement. And I can certainly remember the seeds being laid.
Now, yeah, I know you think you can.
Okay.
Let's have a look. When did you last check?
When did I last check? I haven't,
Well, you haven't checked since the 70s. You've been subscribing to this memory for 40 years without checking that it's true.
Hold on. I'm not having a go, because what I'm saying.
No, nor am I. I'm just trying to find the thing that we're talking about.
I know it's true because I can remember it, and I can remember.
But when did you last check?
I'm sorry, James. I haven't checked for quite a while.
Okay. So you've rung in to tell me that the Muslim Council of Britain said something before the Muslim Council of Britain existed, and you're certain it happened, but you haven't checked for 40 years.
Hang on. But let's make an assumption. Let's make an assumption that I am correct, and that Osama bin Laden, who by no means was a fool, can see the discontent being spread amongst Western society.
Yes, but that was spread after he started spreading murder and violence and terrorism around the world.
It was spread by both sides beforehand.
But you can't point to when or where. You've just got a false memory, because it certainly wasn't the Muslim Council of Britain, which didn't exist until 1997. It's all right.
Okay.
We're assuming you're correct, but we know that you're not, which is a fairly odd conversational device.
All right, let's assume I'm correct. All right? Now...
Well, I don't think we can. That would be like ringing me to tell me the moon's made of cheese and then insisting... I mean, I just want one piece of evidence that anything you've said to me since you came on the radio is true. Can you provide one piece of evidence?
If you give me 2 minutes, I can look up Google.
I will, yeah. Go on.
Let me just see.
Remember, we're going back to the 70s.
Yeah. Let's have a look if I can find anything. Wouldn't you know, I haven't got a data connection right now.
Well, let's assume you have.
Okay, let's assume. All right, I'm sure if I am incorrect, people will phone in, and I'm sure if
it's not really how it works. You need to be confident that you're correct before you phone in, otherwise this happens.
Okay, I am absolutely correct, but without evidence.
Well, no, we do have evidence that the Muslim Council of Britain was formed in 1997, so you're definitely not absolutely correct.
Let's see. Well, okay. Before then, it could have been elders of a community. It could have been.
And they were all over the news for years. You said.
Not for years.
Well, you said 70s and 80s.
I said it could have been in the late 70s or the early 80s that this statement was made.
Yeah.
And this statement was made.
Okay. Have you got any data yet?
No, I haven't got any data.
Okay. Well, I have. So what I've done? Why is Sharia law allowed in the UK? I've done statement on Sharia law from 1970s. I've got nothing. Anything else you can think of?
Well, no, I can't. But listen, you're in the journalistic world. I'm sure you can find out.
Well, I have, but you keep telling me that I need to assume that I haven't. I've established exactly how accurate your comments are, and you keep saying, let's assume that they are accurate when I've proved that they're not, and you're still talking.
Okay. Well, then, in which case, go back to your main point, then, with Osama bin Laden. This country has always been xenophobic of people coming into it.
Because that's what you started off by saying.
You're right. And it's true of today. People like Boris Johnson just play on this fact and play to the audience.
Right.
This is what he's doing.
Yes, but you're part of the audience because you believe erroneously that the Muslim Council of Britain made statements in 1970 that explain why some people allowed their xenophobia to take hold, and we've established that they didn't. Shall we call it a day, Howard? Now.
No, but I will send you a message.
Should we call it a day?
I will send you a link where you'll find it.
Okay, but it won't be the Muslim Council of Britain, will it? And I know usually when you ring this radio station, you get away with stuff like this, but not between 10 and 1, mate. You just can't. You know, someone's got to make a stand. It's just not true what you said, and you're going away convinced that it still is. Take care, mate. God bless.
Law. And I'm quite happy about that.
Yeah, well, I think the other mistake that everybody makes is that we seem to latch on to personalities, latch on to people, rather than actual facts of the wider picture. And the wider picture is that if you, as probably what happened in the 30s, obviously I wasn't around, but if you shut down things, what happens is you then get a rise of the right, don't you? It's obvious, yeah, eventually, and it comes back to bite you on the bottom. And yet again, what we've got, the guy from The Guardian there was saying about Brexit, and the other guy, Philip Blond, is it?
Philip Blond, yeah.
And straight away, he latches on to Nigel Farage as though he's a racist. When it's not really racism, what it is it's about protecting.
He didn't say he was a racist. He said.
Please just let me 3 more words. It's about protecting people at the bottom.
Well, all right. I just want to be clear. He didn't say that Nigel Farage was a racist. He was pointing out that he was of immigrant stock. No, it isn't. He was saying.
Implying, isn't it?
No, it isn't. He was saying it isn't. He was saying he uses immigration in a particular, not necessarily. He uses immigration in a particular way, and blithely forgets or hopes people will forget that he comes from immigrant stock himself, as do a lot of people in this country, myself included.
Do you think Trump is a racist?
I do think Trump is a racist, yeah.
So who's he married to?
Melania.
And where's she from?
She's white, of course.
Slovakia. No, it's Slovakia.
She's from...
So what does actually racism mean? What does it actually mean in the terms of what we're talking about?
No, but she's the same race as Donald Trump. Just to be clear on that.
And on the black, white, Asian, yellow, whatever. Yeah, is that what you mean?
Well, that's what racism means.
Well, yeah, maybe.
Well, it does.
Okay.
It does.
Yeah, well, I don't see that. People have a problem with anybody, you know, because the thing is, over the last 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years, it's all been completely watered down anyway. But the problem is when people rise up from the bottom saying we don't want what's going on for the last 40 years, automatically the people that are not in that position start saying that it's because we're racist.
But Iain, not wanting politics to be the same as it's been for the last 40 years is a perfectly legitimate position. And let me finish. You and anybody else who cares to espouse that politics, get out there and do it. But do you accept that you can do it without being vicious towards, for example, Muslim women who wear the burqa or wear the niqab?
Well, that's a difficult one, isn't it?
You can criticise it, you can question the wearing of it, you can discuss the wearing of it, but you can do it without attacking them, yeah?
Yeah, but completely. The only thing about the burqa that I disagree with is the fact that I wouldn't want my children being taught by a teacher who's standing there in a niqab, would you? Because you'd want the facial expressions and the body expressions and the body language.
Well, I do see what you mean. I just don't share that discomfort as you do.
You'll probably call me a racist.
I'm not. Well, please don't presume I'm calling you a racist every time you open your mouth.
I've been called a racist.
Well, Islam isn't a race. Muslims aren't a race of people.
Well, whatever it is, I don't know what I've been called. But the fact is, this is just the problems that are happening at the bottom that the people at the top just don't seem to want to accept. So as soon as you start to say anything, it immediately gets shut down and made out as though it's a racist comment.
Well, you're not being shut down, are you? You're on national radio being allowed to speak, which is absolutely right.
We haven't got a country big enough to cope. It's as simple as that.
All right, before we go on to immigration again, let me bring the conversation back, if I can, to the Conservative Party. Let's just say that the idea that the Conservative Party is moving further and further rightwards, and let's say that Boris Johnson is the engine room of that journey rightwards. You, Iain, you say that is a good journey for the Conservative Party, do you? And it's one you could vote for.
I actually think that what's going to happen is that both of these parties are going to implode on themselves, and there will be a third party set up for the people at the bottom to be represented by, instead of the two that are pretending to represent the people at the bottom.
And what will that look like, that party?
Well, I've got no idea. You know, I'm just a regular cab driver. But that's how I see it. The way it is really is what we're being sold isn't really. It's just maintaining the status quo.
All right, Iain, thank you. Let's hear from Matthew in Guildford before we go to the news at 3:30. Hi, Matthew.
Hi. I think that we don't have freedom of speech in this country, and the idea that we do is, quite frankly, laughable.
Why?
Well, my definition, and the definition that the actual country which does have freedom of speech, America, uses, is anything but the incitement of violence. The fact that the police had to look into whether Boris Johnson was spouting hate speech, which is just a nonsense term in and by itself, is just pathetic. The police have got better things to deal with.
Well, the police have to respond if somebody brings a complaint to them, don't they? And if somebody said, I think this is a crime, they have to assess whether it is, and they've answered that. The commissioner of the Met said it is not a crime. He has not committed a crime.
The idea that she publicly released a statement saying, oh, yeah, it's not a crime.
She didn't publicly release a statement. She was asked a question and she answered it. That's very different.
She quite clearly politicised it. She could have just fobbed it off. She didn't have to go on about it. And also...
Matthew, you're insane. She was asked a question and she answered it. That's not going on about it, and that's not issuing a statement, releasing a statement. It's answering a question.
The way, if she had to answer it, the way she should have gone is, all they had to do was look at the statement and see he's not inciting violence against anybody. He's not so that's it. That's freedom of speech. That's fine.
Well, she kind of did, really, didn't she?
Debate. But there's still a debate raging because of it, that whether or not it was freedom of speech. Yes, it was. Of course it was freedom of speech. And I get we have things in this country like the Communications Act, which is just a horrible piece of legislation. But the idea that hate speech laws in this country still exist is pathetic.
And as for the Conservative Party heading rightwards in the way that the Labour Party has headed leftwards, the leadership of the party anyway, is that something you'd welcome, Matthew?
I'm as wary of far-left extremism as I am of far-right extremism. I don't want a new EDL, because that's just disgusting, and quite frankly, it does give me a bit of fear. But the idea that we hold one up to, the standard of, Nazism, fascism, it's such a thing that we should be worried about, yet we don't worry about things on the far left, which is just as prevalent. I mean, communism killed 4 times as many people as fascism, yet... Well,
I think people do worry about extremism on the far left. I certainly worry about extremism on the far left, and we've spent quite a bit of time this summer talking about it. Matthew, thank you. Matthew in Guildford. It's a lot of... Is it the weather? Everybody seems a bit bad-tempered today.
We're talking about the sanctions that America has imposed against Russia due to the Novichok attack in Salisbury. Would you say it's slightly embarrassing that the Americans have done this and we haven't, because it, after all, happened on our soil? One British person has been killed as a result of it. Obviously, the Skripals survived. Charlie Rowley survived, but Dawn Sturgis sadly did not. It is unprecedented for a chemical attack to be launched on a foreign country's soil. And as we heard there from Bill Browder, it is almost inconceivable that it was anyone apart from the Russians. I would have said, and I don't want to necessarily go back through all of the heated debates that we had at the time as to, well, what motivated them to do this and all the rest of it. All of the evidence points that way. The fact that it was Novichok, the fact that was only ever produced in Russia, the fact that the security services have now identified 2 people who they think were responsible for it and want to extradite them from Russia. Of course, Russia never extradites anyone. I don't think there is any doubt that this was instigated by Russia in some way. And as Bill Browder said, that there is a difference between 100% proof in a court of law and issues of national security, where you can never necessarily get publicly available 100% proof. So are these sanctions justified? What effect will they have on Russia? And do you think that Britain should follow suit? 0345 6060 973. And why do you think it is that President Trump has said absolutely nothing about this? John is in Gravesend. Hello, John.
Very good afternoon to you, Iain.
Hello.
Don't worry about Russia as regards to sanction. They're just doing great. 2,000 tons of gold, 17% debt to GDP and all that. The problem I'm having is it's all the assertions are made by politicians. Bill Browder said it was only made in Russia, which is wrong. It was done in the Ukraine. It's been the chap who formulated it now lives in the United States. It's been openly paraded as a recipe on the internet, and I don't hear anything from the police or the experts at Porton Down to confirm a single thing, right, other than it's possibly made up by the Department of Dodgy Dossiers, which is the security services who probably...
So we did it ourselves.
Well, I'm saying the story. We're making up the story.
Why would we do that? We gave asylum to Mr. Skripal. Why would we try and kill him?
Well, to do precisely what you're doing now, to denigrate Russia. There's no gain to Russia, this at all. They could have killed him when he was in Russia. They could have killed his daughter when she was in Russia and she's going back. There's no logical sense in any of this other than what with the storyline we've been told. And there's no police confirmation, there's no Porton Down confirmation. Nobody will put their head above the parapet, only politicians and the Department of Dodgy Dossiers.
So you don't believe that they have identified the 2 people responsible for this at all? They've manufactured that too?
Well, why not?
Well, why?
Well, for the same reason. There's a storyline to be told. It didn't derail that wonderful football World Cup series as it was supposed
Well, hang on.
to.
The World Cup was after all of this.
Yes, and the idea was the idea also was to create havoc and have countries pull out of the World Cup and ruin the event for Russia.
Really?
I mean, yes. Like, you know, it's so obvious.
It's funny. I don't remember any of that.
Give me one police officer. Give me one scientist. Name one individual. Put their name to it. Go on.
Well, the OPCW have confirmed what the substance was, haven't they? And they have confirmed that it was manufactured in Russia.
And they are at one point, and they've also confirmed that Russia destroyed her stockpiles. And funnily enough, the Americans haven't. And
so it's the Americans that are behind it. I wondered how long it would take us to get there.
Well,
why is it that you believe anyone apart from your own country?
Because I fell for the, you know, anything done in 45 minutes now I worry about. I won't even cook a pie in 45 minutes in case it lies to me.
God, incisive political commentary there.
No, I'm serious. This is just to denigrate Russia. There's no gain for Russia. Russia's doing okay. Look east.
Is Russia really doing okay? Because, I mean, its economy is smaller than the size of Italy.
Well, how is it then they can do so much on a defence budget of $69 billion and Britain has nothing to show for $55 billion, which is part of a NATO spend of $970 billion, which is why the politicians will only discuss defence in terms of percentages because they don't want you to know how much money we've wasted and how many hospitals we have to close to buy a bomb or a tank.
You really are a full-scale Russian propagandist, aren't you?
No, I do my own research. And
well, you're not doing it very well, I'm afraid, are you? Because what you are, you're somebody who will believe everything that the Russians feed you and nothing that you hear from your own government. And there are words for people like you, John.
Mm-hmm. Go on.
Well, I think you know exactly what words I'm thinking of. I just find it inconceivable that people actually exist who swallow Russian propaganda hook, line and sinker and use it to denigrate their own country and that their own security services, their own government. And you can disagree with the government all you like. At least when Russia does something good, I would have the good grace to say, I mean, when the World Cup happened, I praised Russia. I said it was a fantastic event and they'd done a brilliant job organising it. That doesn't mean to say that I don't criticise them for other things. But you seem to have the view that Russia can do no wrong and your own country only ever does wrong.
We've got it. I mean, I've served in our military, and I like to know that if soldiers get their legs blown off, it's in a good cause. And I can't think of a single event since the Falklands which has been where British soldiers have fought or died or been maimed in Britain's interest.
Sierra Leone, Kosovo, you don't think we did good in those places?
No.
Okay. Well, because I think those two countries would very much disagree with you.
No, I want a Ministry of Defence, not a Ministry of Attack.
It's not a Ministry of Attack. If you know anything about what happened in Kosovo, if you know anything about what happened in Sierra Leone, we did not attack those two countries. We were defending their populations against terrible people who were trying to massacre them. And we did a good job in those. Now, I accept on Iraq, on Afghanistan, fine, there's a debate to be had, but not on those two. So you can't just say that nothing good has been done by our armed forces since the Falklands.
I'm trying to say that since the Falklands, I can't myself justify any soldier.
Well, I've just given you two examples.
But they're still not in Britain's interests.
Well, do you not think that, as we are on the Security Council of the United Nations, we do have a world security role? And maybe you think we shouldn't have, but the fact that we do means that we do... I mean, do you not think, like in Rwanda, for example, where the whole international community failed, do you not think that would have been a good example of where Britain and the US and whoever else should have intervened to stop that genocide?
We won't stop any genocide where they grow Brussels sprouts. If there's pipelines...
Well, what does that even mean?
We will go.
What does that even mean?
Well, it's to do with economics, it's to do with pipelines, it's to do with...
Well, what pipelines were there in Kosovo? What pipelines were there in Sierra Leone?
I don't know. There were none in those two, as far as I know. But as regards Afghanistan...
So that rather sort of defeats your argument, doesn't it? If you say we only ever intervene where there are oil interests and whatever, I've given you two examples of where that doesn't actually happen.
We're in Afghanistan because of the Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Indian pipeline.
No, we were in Afghanistan because terrorists bombed on 9/11. That's why we're in Afghanistan, to defeat the Taliban. Now, we can argue about whether that was very successful or not, but that was the reason why we were there. Or do you think that President Bush provoked 9/11 himself for reasons of oil?
Yes.
You do. Goodbye, John. Andrew's in Camden. Andrew, what would you like to say?
Oh, hello, Iain. I'm a first-time caller to your show, so I'm a bit nervous.
Well, welcome.
Thank you. I have to say that I did agree with that last caller, and indeed your first caller on this subject. I personally believe that the British government has completely made all of this up. I believe that it's not true.
Why would it make it up? And B, how would they manufacture the evidence that they persuaded 30 countries to deport Russian diplomats over?
Well, to answer your first question, I believe that there are perhaps corporate interests, and I believe that last caller that just came on...
What would they be? I mean, on what planet have corporate interests got any role to play in this?
Well, for example, I mean, if we look at actually what we were told in the following days of actually this event occurring, when it was actually released right back, I've been following this story very closely. We were told that it was highly likely that it was Russia. Now, this crime, albeit we're told that there's a nerve agent involved, a crime is a crime. It doesn't matter what type of crime. You know, 2 people were attacked. Now, British judges don't convict people on the basis, or British juries, I should say, on the basis of highly likely. It doesn't make sense. The Russians have flatly denied it, and they indeed
of course we must believe them then, shouldn't we?
Well, no, but their diplomats were expelled in a very, very short period of time, and it just doesn't seem logical. It doesn't seem cogent, you know, and I believe that when you called the first caller a Russian propagandist, I believe that this doesn't really make sense. I mean, I personally have never been to Russia. I've worked with a lot of Russian people in my job, and they've always seemed very hardworking, very intelligent people, and I don't really think that the Russian government is really interested in trying to destabilize the world. I think that the West... Yeah, no,
oh my goodness, you have just undermined everything you've just said by that. No, that's what they're doing all the time. Have you not read about them trying to destabilise elections, referendums? That's kind of what they do.
We don't have any evidence.
Oh my goodness!
We don't have any evidence.
You see, you say you follow these things closely, and yet you're just swallowing this propaganda, aren't you? Again.
It's nothing to do with propaganda. I have a logical, critical mind.
Well, I'm sorry, Andrew. This conversation, I think, will prove to virtually everyone listening, apart from people who like to disbelieve their own country and believe the Russians, I think that will prove to them that you haven't got a logical mind, that you've been completely taken in, hook, line and sinker. Anyway, well, that was a strange hour, wasn't it?
Simon has called from Alford, though, to carry on our conversation about Boris Johnson's words. Does he have the power to incite with these words, Simon?
Oh, good afternoon. I guess the comment I'd like to make is that this really is reminiscent of Brexit. The liberal elite refused to have conversations, pointed conversations about things, just like they refused to talk about the issues with Europe and the issues about immigration, until someone on the sidelines suddenly starts to get traction and galvanises people to create actions. Just like your Nigel Farage of this world got massive support for the need to discuss Europe and immigration. Cameron saw the power he was getting and moved to the right.
But before you finish that point, Simon, I was interviewing Nigel Farage for years before the Brexit vote. He had his voice. He used his voice. We heard his voice. It wasn't quashed. It wasn't silenced.
No, you're missing my point. He showed that there was a massive need for this discussion that regular politicians were refusing to have.
It's the only conversation the Conservative Party have had for the last 30 years.
Yeah, but they were talking about it, but no one was prepared to do anything about it. So Cameron moved to the right, and this is where we came up with the Brexit vote.
Cameron did not move the Conservative Party to the right. He very much moved it to the centre.
Well, they were to the left of centre then. And they moved to the right. Basically, the Conservatives took Farage's ground from underneath him and punctured his balloon. Fine, that's politics. And this is exactly the same thing that's happening with what Boris has done.
And whose balloon's being punctured here?
There's a massive upswell of people who need to talk about this. Maybe the London elite don't think we do.
Simon, I've been talking, again, I'm sorry, but, on air for years I've been talking about the hijab and the niqab. Years.
There is a stifling of actual debate.
Where is it? Where is the stifling?
Well, why do people up north feel that there is a stifling of debate if there isn't a stifling of debate? You might not.
Who feels there's a stifling of debate? Who feels there's a stifling of debate?
A huge amount of the population in the north feel that there is
in the north.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why is it in the north?
I don't talk about the south because I'm the north.
Well, I regularly spend time in what you call the north, and further north to the north in a place called Scotland, and I'm going to the northeast of England soon. So I travel around this country a lot, and I'm not sure what you're referring to with the statement that just says debate is being stifled in the north. You try and stifle debate in the north, mate. Good luck to you.
Right. The voices of the north who want to discuss Islam and integration and everything else are not heard or are stifled or are called racist. And the reason that Boris has done this isn't just, in my opinion, this isn't just about wearing hijab or anything else. This is about starting a debate about how Islam
he didn't start it.
Fit into our society.
You may have only started listening when he spoke, but he didn't start it. I've been talking about this for years on air with people, with politicians and with people like you for years.
In my opinion, the reason he used the words he did is because people don't listen to whispers. If you want to be heard now, you've got to say something so outrageous that it makes people sit up and listen. Now, whether he was right or wrong with what he said is somewhat irrelevant.
And that's the route you want our politics to go to you. You want politicians to routinely use the language of attack in order to be heard.
No, I want debates. I want debates like this about stuff that's not being debated.
It is being debated, Simon. Listen, LBC, for a start, myself over years at LBC and at other places, been talking about this for yonks before Boris Johnson was offensive last week. Absolute yonks.
But with all due respect, you are not our political elite. And our political elite do not want to talk about this.
I refer the right honourable gentleman to Jack Straw. There couldn't be more of a political elite than Jack Straw, a Mandarin minister if ever I saw one.
Maybe going back 15 years.
But that's my point. It was happening and has continued to happen.
But it hasn't continued to happen. It hasn't. I appreciate your time. I've said what my position is, and I think I'm right. You're welcome to your opinion. But the longer the liberal elite ignore the fact that people need to talk about things that are not necessarily nice to talk about, sooner or later it's going to come around and it's going to bite them in the ass.
And what's not nice to talk about? I don't have a problem talking about the niqab. I spoke to two women, one who wears it, one vehemently against wearing it last week. It's not a difficult conversation to have. It's just you just need to have it openly. So why did Boris Johnson, a clever man we're told, a wordsmith we're told, choose to use words that inevitably divide? Why did he do that?
Because he wanted to drop a rock in the pool instead of and make a splash.
Oh, well, as my mum used to say about swearing, it's not big and it's not clever, particularly because he's clever enough to do better than that. Simon, thank you. I don't think we see eye to eye on that, but thanks for your call, Simon in Alford. Luke has called from Birmingham to comment on today's events beginning at 7:37 this morning when a man ploughed into pedestrians and cyclists on the edges of Parliament Square, only to head full speed towards the manned security barriers, manned by police officers, security barriers in Westminster outside Parliament. I'm just looking at footage now of what looked to be forensic officers anyway, examining the area, taking photographs of the car, which is still in place, still rammed up against that barrier. Luke, hello.
Hello, Sheila. Hello.
How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, actually. Yeah, so a little while ago, you spoke of someone who texted in saying there's ghettos in this country.
And Brian in Rotherham.
Yeah, you doubted him. Well, actually, I live in one of these ghettos.
Well, no, he said... that's why I invited calls like yours. I didn't say there aren't any. I just said Britain still has communities. He said Britain has no communities anymore. It only has ghettos. That isn't true. But you tell me your lived experience.
Yeah. So basically, I live in one of these ghettos. It's called Small Heath in Birmingham. And there is community there. It's Islamic community. It's basically an Islamic monoculture. And the point is, when you have that situation, it breeds terrorist activity. Even last year on The Independent, it spoke of Birmingham being a hotbed for terrorism. So this is actually a fact. And the issue is, it's only coming out of the Muslim community. The Sikhs, the Hindus aren't doing this. Black people aren't doing this. White people, well, some white people, but most aren't doing it. It's Muslims. And these areas exist. Also, Sheila, you live in Richmond, I believe, which is only 3% Muslim. And so I think you have to understand, when you speak of Muslims, you don't have personal experience of these people.
These people? Which people?
Muslim people, Sheila.
Well, I do, Luke. I have friends who are Muslims, and I'd appreciate if you didn't just say where I live on national radio. I've had a stalking. Well, I've had. It's not on my Twitter feed. I've had a stalker recently. So anyway, let's not go into that. Let's just leave where I live out of it. You can talk about the nature of where I live. That's fine. But the point remains that we don't all just sit in our living rooms and not go anywhere and mix with people. So you're wrong to say I don't know Muslims. And these people isn't how I think of the Muslims I know, or any Muslims for that matter.
Yeah, but I think what a major issue is, Sheila, is that we are being replaced in this country by Muslims, because the area of Small Heath 100 years ago was not Islamic. I would say before World War II, it was almost entirely white. But since World War II, corrupt governments have slowly replaced people in this area. Also, there's a place in northern England called Saddletown. There's only 50 white people left, 4,000 Asians. This is happening on an industrial scale. We are being replaced in our own country, and it needs to stop.
Replaced?
Yes.
So what's your diagnosis then? What's your prescription for your diagnosis, I should say, Luke?
Well, I think personally,
Mass
Sheila,
transportation to Australia?
We should limit Muslim immigration into this country. Sheila, a good question for you. What percentage of Muslim in this country would be acceptable for you?
I don't think in those terms, Luke. I'm not going to give you a figure because I don't think in those terms.
Okay. Well, Pew Research have stated by 2050 it could be 17% Muslim, 17%. And we also know that over half of these Muslims want homosexuals to be locked up. Do you support that idea, Sheila?
Half of these Muslims want homosexuals to be locked up. Which Muslims? And where's your evidence for that, Luke? So far, I'd much rather live next door to them than you at the moment.
Sheila, there was a survey 2 years ago that stated 52% do not want homosexuality to be legal in this country.
Neither does the Pope, and we give him a hearing.
No, Sheila. This is not believing that homosexuality is a sin. They want them to be locked up or possibly beheaded.
Or possibly beheaded. Luke, I'm not sure of your sources, so I'm not going to allow you to carry on spouting such things. We're being replaced in our country. He's swallowed the ban and lemonade, hasn't he? Full hook, line and sinker, Luke. What an objectionable person.
Let's come back to the conversation, those technical notices regarding Brexit, and Lisa in Stamford. Hello, Lisa. Good morning.
Hello, morning, Nick. Well, I wanted to comment on the farmer you've just had.
Yes.
This panic that's going on, we're not going to have any food. It's just ridiculous.
He didn't quite go as far as that, but he is going to lose a market.
No. We produce so much in this country, be it meat, wheat, fruit and veg. Why can't we start keeping our own stuff we produce? It's fresher, it will taste better. We won't have to worry about exporting it abroad.
We haven't got enough.
We don't produce enough for the UK.
No. To feed ourselves, nothing like enough, no. For instance, lamb would become virtually extinct. Why do you think New Zealand lamb is so... We have lamb, of course we grow lamb, and of course we have lambs, I appreciate that. But not enough lamb to cope with demand. Why do you suppose New Zealand lamb is so huge here?
Well, I don't mind importing stuff from New Zealand. It's just...
Hang on, a minute ago you said we were closing the gates and pulling up the drawbridge, but now we'll leave the back door open to New Zealand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I'm talking about Europe.
Right.
But it just seems that we can.
What am I going to do? What am I going to do on special occasions when I want a glass of champagne?
Well, that California apparently produced it.
Ooh, have you ever had it?
Pardon?
I said, have you ever had it?
No. Is it bad?
It's not great. It's not great.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to work, is it, really, this?
Oh, okay, then.
Because we'll only be able to have apples. It will be seasonal, and you'll have no such thing as a banana in this country.
No, and we will go back to seasonal eating.
But I like strawberries all year round. I don't just want to have them during the Wimbledon fortnight.
Yeah, but the English ones are best.
Your head is not for turning. Have a great bank holiday weekend, Lisa. It's an idea. Thank you. Iain is in Harlow, coming back to those Brexit technical notices or papers. Iain, your view on what you heard yesterday. Good morning.
Oh, yeah, Nick, good morning. I think it's brilliant because it...
Sorry, what part is brilliant?
That we're threatening to actually walk away with no deal, even though most sane people, leaving.
I think if you were listening to this in France and you had a pension and you were told you might have trouble accessing your pension or accessing your bank account, I don't think you'd be using the word brilliant, Iain.
If he was well, I'm not in France.
No, but there are plenty of expats who are, and they've paid taxes all their lives.
No, but the point is, Nick, the whole point is that it's not really going to happen, is it?
What do you mean what's not going to happen, my friend?
We've got the same in reverse, haven't we? Everything is in reverse.
Right.
Isn't it? People are forgetting that, we have things from them, they have things from us, and it's a shared science.
So if we go back to how this was characterised, which is in a way it's almost a game of bluff, or I suppose it's Mrs May's poker face. Do you think in Brussels they'll be thinking, oh, right, OK, so they are prepared to endure a little bit of pain, we'd better look to ourselves and redo this?
Yes.
Confident of that?
Well, I am, because I don't think it'll happen.
All right, OK. Iain, let's see if you're right. Thank you for that.
Andrew's in Halifax. Hi, Andrew.
Morning, Tom.
Hello.
Well, first of all, I'm a passionate Brexiteer. I phone many times to the station to articulate that fact. But secondly, I agree with you that a good deal for this country would be better than a no deal. However, it's not the case that any deal will be better than a no deal. The problem I have with Hammond's intervention is not just that his previous messages have been shown to be demonstrably false. If you remember the little Pravda booklet that the government sent out before the referendum, forecast all sorts of apocalyptic
Yes, he wasn't
scenarios.
the Chancellor then, but yes.
No, he wasn't, that's true. But also, I think there's a point which a lot of people, especially in London, haven't touched up on, and that is the fact that Leavers have been on the receiving end of criticism, vituperation, calumny, whatever you want to call it, that if directed against black, Asian, gay, Jewish people in society, that those people would have been condemned for it.
You think you've been abused on that scale?
Oh, I think Leave voters have been abused by the Liberal establishment and their supporters in the media in a way that no other group in contemporary British history has been.
Really?
And yes, I do. And it's got to the stage now where people like me wouldn't trust Philip Hammond or Anna Soubry if they told me that it was Friday and that the weather was sunshine and scattered showers. This is the problem, that if the Remain voters had sought to... Oh, well, I'm not saying all Remain voters. I think a lot of Remain voters are very reasonable people who had a different vision for me but have accepted the outcome. I'm talking about these continuity types.
And you would put Philip Hammond in that bracket, even though he is because if he was so uncomfortable with what he was about to be involved in, and he sits around the cabinet table and he's involved in the EU SNN meetings, the strategy and negotiation meetings, where the very, very senior members of the cabinet who set out the European negotiating strategy meet quite regularly. He's involved in that. If he was so uncomfortable with what he was about to help do, he would have to resign.
But it depends what you define as what is the do, what is the end objective, and I've become increasingly convinced that this is a cabinet that's determined to deliver Brexit in name only, and the good deal that I'd like to see, I don't think is deliverable under Chequers, and I certainly don't think is deliverable under Theresa May.
Why?
Because their heart is not in this.
But that's what I don't. That's really what I don't understand because the only person whose heart is going to be in this in the way in which you want it to be, Andrew, might actually just be you.
No. I mean, I think that's an absurd claim.
But you might disagree with Michael Gove's version of what Brexit looks like, or with what Douglas Carswell's version. You might disagree with all of it, in which case the only person you're going to be satisfied that can deliver this to your heart's desire is yourself.
No, I don't believe that at all. And I think the size of the mandate in the referendum, yes, it shows there are many different interpretations of leave, but I also think that people aren't stupid enough to believe in the round that what Theresa May is delivering under Chequers is anything like what we were promised would be delivered before the referendum was called and during the referendum campaign.
If you were told that what you were promised couldn't happen now, let's leave the fact that it might not happen at all, but couldn't happen now, would you be satisfied to wait to the point at which the country is ready to come out with no deal whatsoever and we can have incremental divergence?
Well, in that respect, that comes down to a trust not only in the country's capabilities, which I do have, but in the goodwill of the EU, which I most certainly don't have. And I think the precedent for that has been set by the fact that Tusk said, yes, we could have a Canada plus deal, which I think Peter Lilly mentioned, providing that we are prepared to allow the EU to annex a part of our sovereign and constitutional territory.
Yeah, well, we can't do that.
People up. No, we can't do that, and we won't do that.
So that deal is that option is off the table then, because we can't possibly annex part of the United Kingdom. Andrew, I appreciate your call. Thank you. 10:41. Let's go to Mary in Finchley on the subject of Brexit and belief. Hi, Mary.
Hi, good morning to you. I have yet to see or hear anybody talk about or to see anything about what the European Union as a whole are going to lose without a deal, and each country what they're going to lose without a deal, to see what their side of the, you only do our side, what we're going to lose and what are they going to lose?
Yeah, I agree.
If we don't do trade,
I
why
don't know.
does nobody ever talk about it?
Well, I suppose because it's very hard for a government of one nation to look into the coffers of another nation and explain how much they're going to lose if there is no deal.
But it's not without sort of outside your remit, it's journalists' remit, to find out exactly how much they're going to lose by not dealing with us, each country. What's Poland going to lose? What's everybody going to lose? And without our contribution, the money, what are they each going to lose by not trading with us?
So we're in agreement then. We're in agreement, Mary, that no deal would be a bad outcome for everybody.
Yes, but nobody talks about how bad an outcome it is for them and why Barnier is sort of like, everybody says about, he's going to do this. And well, what are they going to lose? Why has nobody ever challenged him? I think probably Nigel Farage has, but nobody ever seems to talk about it, what they have said and what he said, how much they are going to lose. Not just our money, but each country with trade.
Perfectly fair point. Perfectly fair question to ask. But the ultimate answer is, if they are going to lose, which it does seem like they are, it might be, I don't know what the figures are, so it's hard to say whether it would be more or less than the United Kingdom, but you can look into trade relationships and how much money goes back and forth between the two blocks, between us and the European Union. But the end point is that you agree with me that no deal would be a bad outcome for everybody.
No, I don't.
How? How? You've just said that nobody's looking...
No. If it's a bad outcome for us and a bad outcome for them, individual countries, then us talking about how bad it is for us is a stupid argument to put forward. If you don't also say, and Barnier doesn't admit that it's going to be an awfully difficult time for all the countries for all the reasons, and tourists and medicine and everything else they say that's bad for us, well, it's going to be equal. But nobody says it, so put the pressure on Barnier, not on us.
But even still, regardless of how much one side is going to lose and the other side is going to lose, how can you not see that in this event no deal would be a bad thing?
Because if it's just as bad for them, then they won't want it. But nobody sees that.
But if that's the case, and let's say that is the case, and in fact everything that Barnier and the European Commission have said is they don't want a no deal either, and the UK doesn't want no deal. It's got to prepare for one, but it doesn't want one, it's trying for something else. And yet you've outlined that and you've asked the questions well, and yet you still think no deal would be okay.
Well, if it's okay for them, it'll be okay for us.
But it's not okay. You've just said that it would be... You've just said that we would lose as a result, that there would be 80 billion borrowing and all the rest of it and all this medicine stuff. You've just outlined how much the EU might not want a no-deal scenario because of the losses that will be brought upon their economy. And your questioning is, well, why isn't that talked about more? Fine. But fundamentally, no deal is a bad thing, isn't it?
You're saying that? I don't think it is a bad deal, a bad scenario, because why would they want 27 countries to be in the same situation as they believe they're putting us? Or the talk is here, oh, it's going to be awful for us. But if you say, all these people, and you found out how much, we wouldn't be asking just us. The questions should be, how much is each country going to lose? How are they going to manage if they don't sell their stuff to us?
And if the answers come back, Mary, and say, actually, it's going to be very difficult for German manufacturers or Polish manufacturers or whatever it's going to, the answer comes back and says everybody loses by this, on varying different scales, but everybody loses. But you're still happy that no deal is a good outcome and a good option?
Very good deal.
I don't know what to do. 0345 6060 973. Mary, thank you. Nick's in Colnbrook. Hi, Nick.
Hi, Tom. I only wanted to come with this from a slightly different angle. I've always distrusted the EU. I've always distrusted MPs. Just the scandals we've had in the past is proof enough of that. My point I wanted to make was that Tony Blair recently, when he went over to the EU, made an absolute fortune. How many other peers are also earning EU pensions from this? I know of a few that I read, 90,000, 370,000. They're getting per year.
Sure.
What did they do to actually get that, and what are they getting it from? And at the end of the day, it's got to come out of the poor man's pocket.
So just to come again, the stats and figures about who's getting what pensions from where I don't have. But let's say
the Sun newspaper was where I got it from off the internet. I'll be honest. So I always have to be a bit careful when
No, I understand.
We all distrust it, but I think it's true.
But the trust issue is the key bit here, isn't it? That if you were to accept part of your pension from an EU scheme, are you saying that you cannot therefore be comprehensively critical or have your own mind and critically think about? You can't be a Eurosceptic if you're involved with the European Union in some way financially, is what you're saying?
I don't know how we trust any of them. And dare I say it, look at the breach that Boris was going to have built. 20 million quid is missing. Nobody's inquiring about it.
So just to go back to that...
Hey, Boris, pay it back. You stole it.
So just to be absolutely clear about what you're saying... Hang on a sec, Nick. Nick. Just be absolutely clear about... Just be absolutely clear about what you're saying. If you are involved financially in some way with the European Union, you can't be a proper Eurosceptic.
I'm just wondering, like I said, that you end up where these people have made a fortune.
Mm-hmm.
They fiddled us in the first place. They were put in the papers saying they were on the con, and yet they've moved on to the EU, and now are getting large quantities of money given to them in pension.
So if you're involved financially with the EU, your Euroscepticism has to be questioned because of you're compromised by the money, right? That's the broad point about what you're saying. Correct?
Sure.
Okay.
I think it all comes down to money, doesn't it? They always say follow the money.
What about Nigel Farage?
Yes, I always query him many a time, but...
You query his Euroscepticism?
No, I query the fact that he has worked out there, but I always do get the impression, and I may be wrong, but if you ask him a question, he will answer it. He doesn't go round the corners like... he's
been involved in the European Union for a long time. He's an MEP. He has been paid for his job as an MEP, rightly, coming out of European Union money. But you still question his Euroscepticism because of his involvement getting European money.
Well, I voted for him last time, so I can't be too much of a sceptic.
So your point about your Euroscepticism is corrupted by your involvement in accepting European money is completely flawed because you voted for Nigel Farage.
There's always going to be one apple out of a rotten bunch that you think's good.
What about Stephen Wolfe?
I don't know of him, I'm afraid.
Former UKIPper, was involved in the European Parliament, big lever. These people are voting to end their own jobs.
Sure.
So him as well.
I wish I was more up on some of the subjects. I'm not. I have to be honest.
So
I just am very wary when you end up where another country basically is becoming a bigger country under this EU flag and telling us how we're going to do things with things that we totally disagree with, and we don't have a right to be able to argue about it. And this is what we're fighting for. And at the end of the day, the mistake that the whole system went wrong, the poor at the bottom of the pile we're not going to get harmed as much as the ones at the top, and they gave us a chance to vote for it. And we turned around and said, our chance.
Sure, but just to come...
And this is where he's bitten them in the backside.
Just to come back to your first point, that Euroscepticism is undermined by your closeness to the European Union, you would accept, hopefully, maybe, that is undermined by people like Nigel Farage, who led the Eurosceptic movement for a long time.
Sorry, say that to me once more so I can go into my numb brain.
No, don't worry. It's early in the morning. Ish.
It is.
Ish.
I've been up since 4.
That's fine. No, I understand. Just one more time. Your Euroscepticism is corrupted or not to be trusted because of your connection to European money, to EU money, your involvement in the financing of the European Union. So what does that do? Hang on a sec. What does that do for people like Nigel Farage, a huge Eurosceptic, led the Eurosceptic movement for a long time, who's been paid for by the European Union as an MEP for many, many years?
He's still fighting for us to come out, so he's actually being paid by somebody who is eventually going to kill the golden egg.
So you trust in his Euroscepticism, even though he's paid for by the European Union or accepts money because he's been paid to be an MEP?
He's stuck to his guns. He said he wanted us out. He's even willing to go back in and have another bite as the Prime Minister seems to be failing us so badly. So he's stuck to his guns, and like I said, if you ask him a question, he'll answer it, whether for him or against him, but he will answer it, which is something that does win my trust.
OK. Nick, we'll leave it there. Thank you. Cup of coffees all round.
We're going to go to James on the line from Croydon. Speak to us, James.
Hiya. I'm sorry, I've only just tuned in to catch sort of the last 10, 15 minutes. But I just, I was just wanting to make the point that I think the left has gone politically mad, and I think that the Catholic Church shouldn't have to change. I think we're well within our rights, because of free speech. We should be able to say and do what we please, but that's just not the case these days.
Well, sorry, James, I'm not understanding your point. Could you just rephrase that in a way without the catchphrases politically mad and the left? And actually, what is it you're saying that you should be allowed to do?
Well, I think that there's so much there's so much drama about what everyone's so concerned with what everyone else is doing these days. And I just think it's gone mad.
Hang on. But James, it's not everyone concerned about what everyone else is doing. It's the church concerned about what everyone else is doing. The church is telling two men who love each other that they're sinful. It's the church interfering in other people's lives. These two men who love each other are just saying, keep out of my life. So the very criticism you're raising is the criticism of the church.
Well, no, the church... I think the church is well within their right to do that, because...
I thought you just didn't like... I thought you just didn't... You just said you don't like people telling everyone else what to do. Now you're saying it's okay for the church to do that.
Well, I think when it's completely unnatural what they're doing, then that's absolutely right. They should be told that they're not allowed.
So you're okay with telling everyone else what to do. You just don't want anyone else telling you what to do.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Well, you just said that if everyone else is doing things unnatural, then they should be told what to do. But before that, you said, why is everyone telling the church what to do?
Yeah, but the church is an institution that's been around for many years. I think if anyone's in the right to tell two men that they shouldn't be having sexual relations, then
it's the church, because it's been around for a long time. So in your view, if I've understood you correctly, and again, I'll give you a chance to respond to this, but if you've been around for a long time, you can tell everybody else what to do. But if you haven't been around for a long time, you can't tell everybody else to get out of your business.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that's the view you have, surely by your own definition, Jews who are around before Catholics should be able to tell Catholics what to do.
Well, if it involves sexual relations between two men, then yeah, I think they should.
Well, not just two men. I mean, any morality. The Old Testament that Jesus changed a lot of. I imagine you agree with me on that. Jesus came along and reformed a lot of the Old Testament rules. By the argument you've just constructed, he was wrong to, because Judaism was there before, and so by definition it's older, has more moral authority, and Jesus should have stayed stum and followed the Old Testament rules.
Well, I don't really know about that, but all I do know...
Well, you do now, because I've just told you, so respond to it. No, James, I've just told you something. Respond to it. You've built an argument that older is better. So by your own argument, Judaism is better than Christianity.
I don't think one's better than the other. I just think the two men shouldn't be having sexual relations.
What? You've got a peculiar fixation on two men having sexual intercourse. Why is that, James?
Well, because it's unnatural.
You seem peculiarly obsessed with how unnatural it is.
Yeah.
Why? Does it make you tingle?
What do you mean?
Well, you seem peculiarly obsessed by it. Everything I'm saying, you're bringing back to being gay. You're bringing back to two men having sex, and it's interesting to me that you're so obsessed with this that you're prepared to adopt contradictory arguments. You're prepared to tolerate a cognitive dissonance in your own mind about why you're so anti it, because when you say something, I extend your argument and you contradict yourself, and you still bring it back to two men having sex. It seems to me like your entire... everything you're saying to me is just to prove to me how unnatural it is for two men to have sex. And I'm wondering why you're so obsessed with two men having sex.
Well, it's unnatural.
Yeah, I know you just said that, but I'm trying to get to why you think that. Anyway, James, I don't think we're going to get anywhere. Your arguments of, you're saying Catholics have the right to tell everybody else what to do because it's been around longer. And then I put to you that Judaism has been around longer than Catholicism. And again, you just go around in circles and don't accept the consequences of your own arguments. Very interesting, mind you, your obsession with it. I suggest you perhaps consider pondering a bit as to why you're so obsessed with two men having sex. You may discover something. It may reveal something to you about yourself. We're going to Richard on the line from Knightsbridge. Tell us what you think, Richard.
I'm quite astonished that you could perpetuate the fact that people should have their moral status manipulated because of time. Okay, we grew up with a society which we had a moral standard. Now that moral standard has been eroded by people like yourself suggesting that the man was getting tingling feelings because he was thinking too much about two men having sex. What was that about?
So somebody that brings every conversation on principle back to it's unnatural for gay people to have sex, I would suggest to you has an unhealthy obsession with gay people having sex. So, Richard, do you object to gay people having sex?
Yes, I do. I think if gay people want to have sex, then let them do it in the privacy of their own home. We don't have to accept it as a society. We don't have to accept it as a moral, proper moral status of people's living. If they want to do that, people do all sorts of things, but they're allowed to do that behind the privacy of their own door, not to flaunt it around the young kids who don't know where the moral line is in this life. And this is why this society today is falling apart, because there is no moral line anymore.
All right, Richard, so can you kindly explain to me what precisely your problem is with two gay men falling in love with each other?
Exactly what the other guy said. It's unnatural. For a start, it's unnatural.
So what's it's unnatural for two? What's unnatural about it? I'm trying to. Okay, Richard, I'm trying to understand though. What is unnatural about it? When you say it's unnatural, what do you mean? Do you mean it's unnatural like masturbation? Do you mean it's unnatural like shaving?
Is natural, isn't it? Masturbation is natural, isn't it? We don't, because we've got a higher sex drive. We don't decide we're going to put our tool in any particular hole. Do we?
Are you shaven, Richard?
Yes, I am.
Right. So when you take that razor and you cut the hair from your face,
yes.
Right, does that strike you as a natural thing to do?
Yes, it does.
Even though hair keeps growing back every morning?
Yes, it does.
It's natural to remove that hair.
Yes,
so let's take the meaning of the word natural. If I put you on a desert island and you didn't have a razor, what would the natural state of your face look like?
Well, I wouldn't be worried about my presentation, would I, if I was living on a desert island?
No. I'm just trying to get into what you mean by natural, because it's not natural to remove hair from your face.
That I fit in. If I was to walk around London with my clothes off and my hair sticking all over the place, that would be unnatural to the environment that I'm moving around. Right or wrong?
Well,
I can't walk around the West End naked and inappropriately dressed, can I? I'd be arrested.
That's right. You're correct. You're perfectly correct to define natural as something that is culture and time specific. In other words, if you're walking around England, in certain parts of England at least, it's perfectly natural to shave because everyone else is shaving. True?
Well, not because everybody else is saying, because you choose to fit into a natural environment. If I didn't choose to fit into a natural environment, then I wouldn't have to shave.
No, I'm with you, Richard. It's if I shave to fit into the environment around me because my friends all shave, that's okay, isn't it?
That's fine, yeah.
Okay, so Richard, have you ever walked through Soho in London?
Yes, I have.
Right, so you're gay when you walk through Soho then, because everyone around you is gay?
No, do you know what? Why do you manipulate it to that sense? Why should I be gay because I walk around Soho?
Well, because people around... You've just defined natural as the environment around you, and the environment around you in Soho is gay, so you should be gay as well.
Well, no, is that the equation you make? Is that the calculations you make? Because I walk around a place that's gay, I should be gay.
Well, you just said if you walk around with clean-shaven people, you're going to be clean-shaven.
No, I didn't say that. I said if I chose to walk around in a society that I felt was natural to my environment, being shaven. For instance, I can't work not tidy, so I have to be tidy, don't I? And tidy for me is to shave.
Okay, so...
Okay, so because I drive through the West End...
So in other words, society... So, Richard, in other words, natural doesn't mean to you what happens naturally if we leave ourselves be. It means what society requests of you. And I would suggest to you, in a country where gay marriage is perfectly legal and where gays are allowed to go around being normal human beings and display their love for one another, that society should also tell you it's perfectly natural to be gay by your own definition, Richard.
Is that normal to you? Is it normal for two men to be gay? That's normal to you, isn't it?
Well, I'll tell you what's normal to me, Richard, is to stay out of other people's business and let them be who they want to be. I'm wondering why you're so obsessed with it.
Why don't they stay out of our business? Why don't they want to? If they want to be gay, fine, go and be gay. Yeah. But don't expect us to accept you being gay. No, and then we have to shift our moral compass to suit you or those people who are gay.
Okay, so why should I shift my moral compass to suit you, Richard, and accept you?
I'm not asking you to.
Well, you clearly are. You're calling up on a national radio station to make your case.
Because of what you're saying. Because you're saying to the guy, he's telling you that it's not natural, and that's his opinion, and you're telling him, oh, well, that means do you get any tingly feelings in it? You're spending a lot of time considering what gay people are like.
Well, like you, Richard. Same. We've been on this call for more than 5 minutes, and you keep talking. You're really angry about this, aren't you?
Well, I went round the West End last week, or when the gay thing.
I'm sure you did.
It was horrific to see the site.
I'm sure you took a long look. Did you stare at them for a long time, Richard?
No, I didn't. I was appalled by them. If I wanted to get out of the car and accost them, because it was appalling to see men kissing on the side street, lying on the floor like Sodom and Gomorrah. Do you think that's what the society we're going to?
So, Richard, you seeing gay people on the street makes you so angry that you feel like attacking them.
It offends me.
And it offends you so much, in your own words, you just said it, that you felt like jumping out of your car and attacking them.
It offends me to see people in that decadent state of affairs and then expect other people to drive through it and accept it. Like we're the ones who are wrong and they're the ones who are right.
Why are you driving through it in the first place, Richard? Why are you titillating yourself like that? Why are you titillating yourself like that, Richard?
Why don't they stay home and do what they want to do? Why don't they go to some special place like some bondage party where they want to go and...
Richard, why do you keep tempting yourself with this imagery in your mind of bondage parties? I mean, clearly you drive through Soho a lot and you stare at them so hard that it makes you angry, probably at yourself. But, you know, you've obviously got some imagery in your mind about bondage parties and sadomasochism. I suggest to you, Richard, you seek help.
Who I am. I've got no fear of being gay. I wouldn't wish to be gay. And it offends me to see people, if they want to be gay, fine, I can't make it.
I tell you what.
But be privately gay. Do it in your own, the confines of your own privacy, not where every kid has to look at it and not know where their moral compass is.
The lady does protesteth too mucheth, Richard. I mean, you clearly want everyone to know you're not gay. I mean, everyone, if there's any doubt here, everyone listening, Richard is not gay. He's not. He drives around Soho staring at them, makes him so angry he feels like jumping out of his car and accosting them because they're probably involved in some, as he said in his own words, some bondage party. But he's not gay. He's not gay, and he's not thinking about being gay, and he's not thinking about bondage parties at all. And he really doesn't want to beat the being gay out of them because he hates being gay so much, and he's not gay. Thank you, Richard, for calling in. Absolute pleasure speaking to you. Going back straight to the calls, far-right leaders rallied behind Corbyn, while a senior Labour MP has called him a racist anti-Semite after a film emerged of him giving a speech on, quote, Zionists in Britain. So why exactly were Corbyn's Zionist references deemed racist? That's the debate. 0345 60 60973 is the number to call. And George has been waiting from Croydon. Tell us what you think, George.
Hi, Maajid. Well, Jeremy Corbyn's version of Zionism is the 1967 UN version, based on international law. In Israel, he supports the existence of a Jewish state, but he also supports the UN perspective on that, which outlaws the theft of land and the forbidding of the ownership of land by the people who live in it, or Palestinian. I mean, that seems to be pretty racist there, Maajid. If you're calling someone who objects to that a racist, I think that kind of makes you a racist, you know what I mean, to me. That is racist behaviour, to stop people owning land in their own country.
Hold on, George. Hold on a minute. Hold your horses. Hold on. Corbyn referred to a group of people in othering language. The group of people he was referring to, in the context of the sentence he uttered, it would have made no sense if he was referring to Theresa May or any other white English person as saying they speak English and they don't understand English irony. That doesn't make any sense. He was referring to British Jews in that speech. And as you just heard from the person he was directly referring to, who claims that Corbyn knew exactly who he was. So if you're referring to a minority group and you're othering them by inferring they don't necessarily understand how to be English properly, George, you're meant to be, I imagine, a leftist. Leftists generally are uber-sensitive about every microaggression of racism they see coming from the right. Are you seriously telling me that you can't see those othering comments of Corbyn in any way as othering a minority group in this country?
Well, I'm saying that something that's very small and subtle has been magnified enormously.
Wait. We'll get to whether it's magnified, George.
Corbyn is unacceptable.
George, we'll get to whether it's magnified. First, do you agree that it was othering of a minority community?
I'm not sure of the context. This is a really subtle thing here. He was addressing a particular small group who misunderstood a particular point. I mean, to me, it's making massive mountains out of molehills.
George, are you? What is your background, George? Are you? Tell us a bit about yourself. Do you vote Corbyn? Are you a leftist? Who are you?
I kind of struggle to vote for anyone now. I personally know I've seen Corbyn in action as an individual, and I have fantastic respect for him because I used to run a little charity in Croydon.
Are you? What are you typically? What we describe as white English? Who are you?
Sorry?
Are you white English?
Well, my family are Irish, but I mean... No,
you're born in England, right?
I mean, the point is, Corbyn...
No, that's not the point, George. I'm asking you a question. I'll ask you what the point is.
Well, this is your MI5 techniques here. I mean,
there we are. Wow.
When you've got problems with an argument, you start forcing questions on people and force them into corners...
Do you think I'm MI5, George?
That are inappropriate to the argument.
Do you think I'm MI5?
That's the whole training is this. I mean,
do you think I've been trained by the MI5?
Brian does it. It's a technique that LBC presenters use. When they've got a problem, they ask a question to demand an answer to that question because it goes nowhere that the caller wants to go. That's what it's about.
Do you think I'm trained by MI5?
I think there's agencies that train presenters. It's obvious, okay? And there's been books written about this, okay? Books written
Which ones?
I've read.
Which ones?
Well, about the CIA and the media, global media. It doesn't matter about stuff like that. I mean, how
if it doesn't matter, I'd ask you why you raised it. You've just suggested I'm trained by MI5, and now you're saying it doesn't matter.
About your technique.
My technique trained by MI5.
When you get in a problem with an argument, trying to force people to answer an inappropriate question.
Yeah. Okay, so now considering you've called up on a national radio show where I'm the host and you're the guest, are you going to do me the courtesy of actually addressing a question I raised to you?
Well, I know that you've got the power in this conversation, but I've responded to your question by saying...
Well, George, no. Talking about power dynamics, George, considering you are a lefty that has great respect for Corbyn...
I'm not a lefty anymore. I'm not neither left
really?
nor right.
Okay, considering you're somebody that has great respect for Corbyn the lefty, and, really, really do respect him so much that you've called on a national radio show to defend him, George, I'm going to put it to you, when you talk about power, I'm going to put it to you how entirely inappropriate it is for white English George to call up and say that brown Pakistani origin Maajid is the racist for being concerned about othering of minority communities in this country. Do you not see that in any way, that you're arrogantly dismissing concerns of racism coming from minority communities who you're meant to be looking after, George, as somebody, what was Corbyn's slogan, was it? A kinder, fairer politics? I mean, does that sound kind and fair to you? Dismissing minority communities' concerns who are screaming at the top of their lungs that they're worried about a rising anti-Semitism across Europe?
Are you concerned about the Palestinians being treated the way they are in Israel? Are you concerned
George, you don't get to answer my question with a question, George. You get to answer my question, and then if you like, you can ask me one. Right? So first answer my question.
LBC is not concerned. LBC is concerned about 3 hours a day of Jewish propaganda complained about Corbyn.
Jewish propaganda?
It's an operation.
Jewish propaganda,
George. Unacceptable.
George, Jewish propaganda.
He is unacceptable to the Jewish community in this country.
George, did you just use the word Jewish propaganda?
0.5% of the population want to dictate to the 99.5% here. I do not.
Who's that 0.5%, George?
Sorry?
Who is that 0.5% you refer to?
The Jewish community.
Right, there you are. George, you're a disgusting anti-Semite who believes in Jewish controlling the media, conspiracy theories. You believe Jews are dictating to the rest of the country how to behave. You, calling in to defend Corbyn, have just proven my point. You're an anti-Semite, George, and I suggest to you go and check your privilege and go and purge yourself of that disgusting trait you have known as racism, because it has seeped so deep inside you that while calling to defend Corbyn against racism, you're oblivious to the fact that you're preaching it yourself. Really, that's really low of you, George, to say the Jews control the media and that being 0.5% of this country, they control the rest of the country. Does it not occur to you that's exactly the kind of propaganda Hitler pushed before he engaged in the Holocaust? It's disgusting, George. You make me sick. Frankly, I don't ever want to speak to you again. Can everyone please make sure I never speak to George again? That's disgusting.
I know he's a moron.